Hello and welcome to Swipe. Coming up, dial R for ruined, how tech is causing filmmakers to lose the plot. Please don't get up, why you don't need to leave the house to explore the outside world. Has the bubble burst? We find out why investors are backing off technology firms. And here's a galaxy that isn't so far, far away. We take a close look at the new Samsung S5. But first, we all love our gadgets, smartphones, tablets, even GPS. Tech has come a long way in the past few decades to make our lives a lot easier. But how is technology affecting the storylines of the shows and films we love? I've been investigating. Modern technology is a potential speed bump for filmmakers. If every modern character has a smartphone in their pocket, then several classic plot points are suddenly made redundant. It's a problem those behind the camera have to deal with.
You've got to think, as a filmmaker, how you're going to build that tension. And you have to, a lot of the time, you have to embrace the technology. Otherwise, you're fighting against an immovable force, really, an unstoppable object. Because technology is there, everyone's using it in their daily lives. If you try to forget that it exists, people aren't going to buy into what they're watching. So, yeah, it does cause issues, but it should, you know, as a scriptwriter or a filmmaker, you should try to embrace it. Or set your movie in 1960s and don't worry about it.
You can always tackle the problem head on. The fourth film in the Die Hard franchise was all about cybercrime and made a running gag of Bruce Willis's character John McClane being out of touch with modern technology.
If you're looking to put a film on that sets in a certain time frame, so say this year, it has to reflect something that is topical in this year. So forecasts, predictions. Is cybercrime, for instance, going to be a major topic point for an action movie? And it has proved true, because we do see that in films like Jack Ryan. We see that in James Bond. But even James Bond is going back to basics these days. In Skyfall, Q only gave him a radio transmitter and a gun.
Were you expecting an exploding pen? We don't really go in for that anymore.
Even if filmmakers do successfully work technology into their narrative, they then have another problem. It doesn't look that great on camera. If your lead character is lost, don't worry, they can just look up their location on their phone. There's one problem though, your audience may have fallen asleep. There is another way. You don't have to worry about tech in some genres, and this could be the reason we're seeing more fantasy, sci-fi and period drama on our screens. If filmmakers choose to avoid the problem completely, they're saving themselves what could be a bit of a battle. You're watching Swipe. Coming up, bubble trouble. Are tech companies losing their popularity with investors? But first, why spend all that money on flights and accommodation when you could just see the world's most famous sights from home? With robotic and virtual reality tech coming on leaps and bounds, it's getting easier and easier to get your culture fix from your armchair. Sky's Tom Platt reports.
This robot could change the tourism industry. Rolling around in the wilderness, the tech offers a hands-on cultural experience without having to travel further than your computer.
Now, while I'm here in London, the camera and robot I'm controlling are all the way over in Iceland. And this is at the Blue Lagoon, a model and a photo shoot there, and I'm able to turn left or right, taking pictures, zooming in or zooming out. It effectively means I can take my holiday snaps from home.
Later this year, robots will roam the halls of Tate Britain after dark. Users will manoeuvre around, viewing artwork at the touch of a button. A high level of control from home is part of its intended appeal.
It's a digital project, but there's also a physical component. We are actually going to be in the space. You log onto this website, you control an actual robot and go around.
If you go online and it's all just as you'd imagine it to be and everything's very perfect, and you go here and it's all very slick, then we haven't got the magic of the kind of connection with the real space. We've actually got real robots and a real gallery, the real artworks.
Tate Britain is also part of Google Street View's art project, along with other galleries showing over 30,000 works around the world. As virtual reality becomes more feasible and readily available, an immersive sightseeing experience could be just round the corner.
We're just at the beginning of how art and digital technology can connect, and there's some really exciting new things like Oculus Rift coming up. I think the Tate would be really interested in virtual reality, and I'd love to find an artist who wants to work with that.
It's not necessarily good news for the tourism industry, worth almost £130 billion in the UK last year. Could people staying home and using virtual tech hurt holiday companies?
There is no substitute for the idea of the experience. Often some of the best stories stem from the unplanned nature of a trip, the people that you meet and the experiences whilst you're there can't be experienced in a virtual world.
For now, a virtual view can't compete with seeing a photo shoot or a work of art in the flesh. But as the technology evolves, cultural experiences from your computer could be the future. Tom Platt, Sky News.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, find out which country is planning to test this electromagnetic railgun at sea. But first, what do Twitter, Amazon, Facebook and LinkedIn have in common? No, that's not my internet browsing history. Their shares have been down at least 20% in a global sell-off that's seen billions of pounds wiped off their market value. Sky's Tom Cheshire asks, is this a tech stock bubble that's about to burst?
They're calling it a tech wreck. Around £275 billion has been wiped off the value of publicly traded technology companies, including businesses like Facebook, Amazon, Twitter and Netflix. They've all seen at least a 20% drop in their values. Even Google, which is a money printing machine really, has seen 11% of its value go recently. And you can think of the recent IPO of King.com. That was one of the worst IPOs in recent history for a tech stock. It dropped 15% in the first day. People are starting to say, are we seeing a tech bubble and is it beginning to burst? Well, if you're thinking of a tech bubble like the one in 2000, 2001, we're not there. Technology valuations aren't nearly as high as they were at that peak back then, and we live in a different world. In 2001, around 480 million people were online. Now that's 3 billion, that figure. So the internet is a lot more part of our lives. And if you look at a company like King.com that makes Candy Crush, it is delivering real profits. King posted around $500 million in pure profit last year. This isn't the vague promise of growth. This is real money. Now, what we are seeing is a slight reality check. Valuations have been high for a bit. They've been driven up by acquisitions from Google and Facebook, companies like WhatsApp, Oculus Rift and Nest. The market's saying, hang on, this is a bit high. They've seen reports come out in February and March and they're moving their money elsewhere. So this isn't the bubble bursting, it's more a little bump.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, is Samsung's Galaxy S5 any good? We'll review the new smartphone in just a minute, but first, here's a roundup of anything you might have missed over the last few days. People have been told to take action to protect their online private data. A bug called Heartbleed has been found in the web encryption technology OpenSSL. The problem means sensitive data like passwords could be at risk. Advice includes stay off the internet and change your passwords, but not all experts agree on a solution.
The safest thing to do as a consumer is to assume that your usernames, passwords and sensitive data were stolen and go and do a mass reset. So get online to your webmail account at Yahoo or alike and change your password. Now that the floor has been closed, the attackers won't be able to get your new credentials and the old information will be rendered useless. So assume compromise and you're in the best position of security.
A weapon which fires at 7 times the speed of sound is to be tested on board a high-speed US Navy vessel from 2016. This will be the first time an electromagnetic railgun is demonstrated at sea, following extensive land trials. The Navy says the device launches at such high speeds that it will save them money in relative terms anyway. The projectiles needed to destroy ships, aircraft and land-based targets cost £15,000 instead of the usual £600,000. Imagine a hacker taking control of a large ship and forcing it to run aground or change course. Research suggests that's exactly what could happen unless drastic action is taken to update navigation software. NCC Group says problems with the electronic chart display and information systems, or ECDIS for short, could open the door for hackers.
You could have a scenario whereby someone who wanted to hide the location of a ship or spoof the direction of a ship, let's say, to try and make it look as if it was still continuing on its correct course when it had actually been hijacked and has taken a completely different course.
How would you feel about being able to see through the bonnet of your car while you're driving? Soon you could be able to do just that thanks to this augmented reality car bonnet, which is in development. The car uses cameras on the grille to see what the road looks like and projects the images onto the bonnet. Land Rover hopes it will help drivers navigate difficult terrain or look at wheel positioning when parking in tight spots. You're watching Swipe. Coming up,
I'm going on an adventure!
we venture into Middle-earth, or is it Legoland? But first, we got our first glimpse of the Samsung S5 smartphone back in February at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. But now you can actually buy one. But the question is it any good? We asked Stuart Miles to take a look for us.
The Samsung Galaxy S5 is the company's latest flagship device and follows off from the S4, which was hugely popular but got a lukewarm response last year. Taking that feedback on board, they've simplified the whole process and yet still packed it with all the latest technologies. Probably key things to mention are the stunning 5.1-inch display. It really is very impressive, and you'll certainly see it pop out at you whenever you turn it on. Also, what we really like is the 16-megapixel camera, which allows you to shoot 4K, which is very future-proofing at the moment. But in our tests in the office, it seems to be outperforming the HTC One M8, which is the other major competing Android smartphone at the moment. It's not all perfect, however. The fingerprint scanner, well, it does require you to use two hands, and it's not as easy to use as the fingerprint scanner on the iPhone 5S. There's also, which is something to be commended, a heart rate monitor on the back of the device, which allows you to test your heart rate at any time. It's good, it works. The S Health app that comes with it is also useful, but whether you actually want to use it after the first couple of months is still yet to be decided. The company also has the Galaxy Fit, which is a notification health band as well, and tying the two together kind of works, but it's not 100% there yet. Early days, very promising. Overall, the latest technology is all there, the latest Snapdragon processors, lots of memory, lots of power, but Samsung's insistence on putting a rather animated animation across Android does slow things down, and as a power user we would like it to be a lot more instant in its response. It's not bad, it's just people will see, that's a bit slow at times, and it doesn't necessarily need to be. Overall, however, it's a very good Android phone, and I think it will be one of the big devices this year, and certainly one of the leading devices from Samsung's point of view.
The new games just keep on coming at the moment. We've asked Daniel Krupa to review a few of his favourites.
FTL Faster Than Light's been out on PC for a couple of years, but it's come to iPad, and it's really at home on the format. It's a top-down real-time strategy game. You're in charge of a spaceship that's travelling through a dangerous sector of space, delivering some very important information, and you constantly get attacked. Now, the game part comes in where you have to make tough decisions and manage your resources. So it puts you in these kind of Star Trek no-win situations where you might have to divert the power from life support and sacrifice a crew member in order to power up the shields or weapons and save the entire ship. It's really simple. It's deceptively simple because actually there's a lot of depth and challenge there. It's also procedurally generated, so every time you play it, it's different. So it has a lot of longevity, but it's just got a lovely kind of retro aesthetic and a really cool 80s synth soundtrack. Monument Valley is probably the first must-have iPad game of the year. It's this really beautiful, tranquil puzzle game, and I think it's kind of inspired by the Dutch artist MC Escher, who did all those kind of drawings of impossible shapes, and it's a puzzle game that bases its puzzles around those impossible shapes. Now you have to lead a princess across a landscape, and sometimes your path will be blocked, but you can rotate the level and create a pathway that you didn't think probably exist in three-dimensional space but can in 2D. And it's challenging, but it's, I never got stuck. Probably takes about a couple hours, but it's a puzzle game that really wants to make you feel satisfied rather than frustrated. Kinect Sports Rivals, as you can probably tell, is a motion-controlled sports simulator, and it's an exclusive to the Xbox One. Now, the Kinect on Xbox One is much more sophisticated, so it controls a little bit better than previous motion-controlled games. Football's not that good because football's quite a dynamic, fluid sport, and motion-controlled games, you have to be rooted to the spot, and it doesn't really pick up what you do with your feet all that well. But the other games like tennis and bowling, which are kind of perennial favourites of motion-controlled games, are actually quite good, and the more sophisticated sensor means that it can differentiate between a drop shot and a lob, And same with bowling. When you put spin on the ball, it recognises that too, which is pretty cool. Rock climbing is probably my favourite because it feels the most like a game, and you can play it side by side with a friend, and it's actually pretty good. Now, it's not the most amazing game, but there's little out on Xbox One right now, and I think it's definitely worth checking out. So the Lego games, now they're making Lego everything, and if you've played like the Batman games or the Marvel games, you kind of have a good idea of what it's going to be like. It's kind of a light-hearted retelling of the two movies. Now, Peter Jackson's third movie isn't out yet, so it kind of sucks that the game doesn't have an end. It ends at the Misty Mountain where they meet the Dragon Smaug. But Traveller's Tales, the guys who make the Lego games, really perfected that formula, and it's really engaging as ever. It's a mixture of platforming, puzzle solving, a bit of combat and collectibles. But as always with the Lego games, I think it's best when you play it with someone else, whether it's a little kid or whether it's another big kid like myself.
The Hobbit. That's it for this week. Remember, you can catch up with the breaking tech stories all week on Sky News for iPad, our smartphone apps, and skynews.com. See you next time.